So welcome everybody to this quarter's newsletter. I thought I'd try something slightly different this month. So rather than going into, pages and pages of text, I've often preempted that with the need to grab a coffee and a donut. I thought I'd try video. We'll give this a go this quarter, see how well it is received. Maybe an opportunity to add a little bit more production, given time and availability. Format is going to be very much the same as usual. I want to touch on the numbers. I'm in a position now where I can update you on certainly November's results. They are literally hot off the press. I want to talk around some of, the opportunities or key initiatives that we've been working on and give you an update on those. And then finally bridge into, Q2, because believe it or not, Q1 is near enough complete now and done, but more on that in a second. So if we start with the training business first, and I know I've made a big point of combining the two together, but I think for the purpose of this exercise, if we just separate the two numbers out and give you some narrative behind each of those, then I think it's imperative to stress that November has been somewhat of a mixed story. The revenue from the training business is pretty much bang on the plan. When I say bang on the plan, there's about a $300 variance, so it's near there. Where the challenge has been, and it's certainly something we've seen this month and not in previous months, is the conversion of that revenue into EBITDA. So whilst on one side we can say tick a box, revenue, great, fantastic, on the EBITDA side, then as a business we struggle to get to our forecast. Now the forecast is somewhat lower than, let's say, the operating plan, but needless to say we got to the forecasted number. The challenge we've had, and I probably sound a little bit like a broken record at this point, is that the actual business mix and how that revenue generated has caused us significant challenges. So on one side, as I say, we can say, wonderful, we got to a revenue number. How that revenue was made up, so if I give you an example, that our public part of our business, or the individual revenue, which admittedly is made up of other things other than just the public, is £140,000 below where it needs to be. The enterprise side of the business is about £50,000-60,000 higher than what it needs to be. So you've got a net difference there of, let's say, 70,000, and that 70,000 piece of revenue normally pulls on our own internal resources, but this time it's been made up of additional things, whether it be products, e-learning, third-party activities that have brought a higher relative cost into the business than we would normally have anticipated. So whilst at a gross revenue level we hit the number, net revenue was certainly impacted by either the way that we generated that revenue or the impact on reseller. But needless to say, if we then wrap that into the context of what we see over the quarter, then October we know was a good result. We hit the plan number at the top line and the bottom line, and this is without really the sales engine at full steam. December is a completely different picture once again. December at the moment, if you take the forecast, is looking to be several $100,000 above a revenue number. Now it's too early to call what that would look like at EBITDA, but if we look again about how that revenue is building, then we know that some of our core vendors, like Cisco, like Microsoft, are performing strongly in the areas that we need them to perform, which are then backed up with things like AWS, which is still seeing a rich vein of activity linked into partner funding. So the quarter perspective is looking solid. I fully expect it to be several $100,000 ahead on the revenue line, but I'm not anticipating be anything other than, let's say, the plan number on profitability. Now that in itself then leads back into the outlook, for quarter two. And already, if you start to look at the daily reports, then they're building up quite nicely a level of revenue intake, whereby February is looking healthy, it's ahead of the curve. January still has some way to go. It's not a million miles away from, but we all know it's a bit of a tricky month for us. We soon head off into I don't want to preempt fate here, but we certainly head off into that Christmas break. And if we're not closer to that operating plan number before we leave, then it puts a huge amount of pressure on all parts of the business when we come back to chase that revenue. And that's certainly something we want to avoid doing. It's certainly something that we're trying to get the sales managers to work with the sales teams to try and claw in and get visibility of where that revenue is coming from sooner rather than later. If I then flip over to GKA and the apprenticeship business, then it's a very, very similar story. You know, we had a strong October, so we were significantly ahead in the grand scheme of things at a revenue level. We were pretty much on plan or just slightly ahead by the tune of 4,000 or 5,000 on profitability or EBITDA. But November has presented again some of these challenges which are relatively unique to that part of the business. It is a business whereby if you have customers delay their letter of intent or their start date, or they have problems recruiting apprenticeships into a program, then there's very little that you can do in the month of delivery to reclaim that revenue or that loss in revenue. And it just so happens that we've been hit on not one but probably 3 occasions where customers have not been able to commit in the way that we expected them to do. So our November result was a little bit disappointing. But actually, if you stand back from that, there was very little that we could have done. We were close enough to the customers, we understood the pressures of the customer. It was a customer decision to delay the start of some of those programs. So we ended up being slightly behind the plan at a revenue level, and that naturally impacted on EBITDA. But then if you roll that clock forward both into December to finish the quarter, then we fully expect to be ahead on revenue. You know, we expect to be in and around the plan number when it comes to EBITDA as well. So collectively, if I was to summarise the performance for this quarter and not just focus on November, because I think we have to play the quarter game and we have to play the collective game, then it's a good performance. We've delivered in line with our expectation. We've had some considerable curveballs or challenges as we've moved through the quarter, and everybody has kind of risen together, pulled together to deliver against those opportunities. So, I just wanted to take it on behalf of myself and on behalf of the management team and say a big thank you, because I recognise, and we all recognise, how much time, effort, how much will goes into servicing opportunities both on the GKA side or the GKA training side, and we have you to thank for that. So again, a wholehearted thank you. And we fully expect, again, as we roll this into Q1, and we know that the number starts to ramp. We gave ourselves a little bit of relief in Q1 to enable the business to build. We know we've got a ramp up period as we move with that, but I think we are hugely confident, given pipeline activity, the customers that we're talking to, that we will be where we need to be if we then sit back and reflect on this when we get to around February or March time. So once again, whilst I've not gone into the specifics of the numbers, and I don't think I necessarily need to, I think what you need to take from this is that it's been a good Q1, and we fully expect it to close and finish in that way. So if I then just focus back a little bit in terms of activity since or during this last quarter. Now, I'm conscious that I've been in this role now for, well, I guess it feels like a lifetime, but it's the best part of 7 or 8 months. I did promise from the outset that this wouldn't be revolution, but it would be evolution. It would be often small little steps that we make, hopefully forward, the occasional backward one as we start to find ourselves and try to identify who it is that we want to be, both short term and long term. And one of the mandates I obviously set was to kind of move away from this very short-term activity of, focusing on a month, focusing on a quarter, focusing on a half year or even the year, and stretching that out to 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And I think we've done enough work over the last 2 or 3 months to start that journey. And I stress, just start that journey. So recently, obviously, as kind of a pseudo kickoff, we talked about the GK House Of. That GK House Of was that underpinning principle, the foundation on which we'll build our business. It very much was around focusing on the here and now, because obviously that ties back into the plan, but more importantly, it was focusing on the future. It was about identifying those key success factors, those critical or imperative actions or activities that will make this organisation a success. So we've had that initial launch. There is more to follow on that, clearly. We certainly want to blaze the organisation in the GK values, and with that becomes a level of education and understanding. We certainly need those work streams and those teams to pull together to work through exactly what some of those key imperatives are. But we have the foundation now in which we can build and move this organisation forward. And again, I'll stress, and if you go back to the numbers piece, this is a good organisation. It's full of very hard-working, loyal individuals that often go that extra mile, for the good of the organisation. So we're built on a very, very solid foundation. I've stressed the words again that it's evolution, not revolution. This has never been about pulling things apart, ripping them to pieces and starting over again. We don't need to do that. I must stress that. So with that becomes, almost micro changes, small bits of change that sometimes go unnoticed unless they're actually pulled out across the business. So we started obviously with that strategic intent linked into the house of. There is a strategic committee now made up of various parts of the organisation. They meet on a monthly basis to review activity, and on a quarterly basis then they'll get together to look at what we call the balanced scorecard. And this is the scorecard in which we monitor and measure the health of our organisation and chart our success and our improvement as we move forward. So that team is assembled by a number of people, and it's firmly something that I'm committed to and something I will continue to drive as we move through the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever that may be. The one thing that I do want to call out at this point in time though, and it comes back to the period we're in, this effectively our Q1 or what was our Q4 in old money, so to speak, but it's a significant busy period of our time. And if we go back to when we developed the plan, both at GK training side or the apprenticeship business, then we expected, certainly on the apprenticeship side, for this to be a period of significant growth. Now, I think it goes without saying that that period of growth doesn't come without some degree of pain. I recognise that there are a number of people in the organisation that are probably wearing several hats and doing several jobs until we can invest or bring the resources on to support that part of the business. The reality goes is you'll never get that timing right. We'll sign off, we'll approve, we'll recruit and invest with, but it can never and never does keep in line with the growth of the business and the pain that the business will go through. The one thing I can say though, and this is absolutely hand on heart, is that we're fully committed to giving and providing those resources. So I would ask those people, whether it be in the apprenticeship side of the business or in the training side, that if you're feeling and are feeling the pressure, but at the end of the tunnel you can see the light in terms of the commitment that the organisation has given to making life a little bit easier for all, and more importantly for the delegate and or the apprentice, then please bear with us. We do recognise it, and we are working very hard to ensure that we have the right infrastructure to support the organisation, both you and obviously the customer. If I then kind of jump back a little bit in terms of other activities that have taken place this month that are very much in line with shaping the organisation in the way it needs to be shaped, then recently I announced that we'd signed an agreement with ISACA. That clearly gives us access to their wider portfolio. We're in the process now of identifying and fine-tuning the agreement with ISC Squared, and at the same time the likes of Mel are working on the GCHQ framework, which again just opens up the level of the numbers of opportunities that we're enabled to engage with and or widens the portfolio. And whilst I talk about portfolio, one of the other initiatives that was very close to my heart, certainly when I took this role, was around ensuring that our business, whichever side of the business you may sit, has the story or has the tools or the resources to engage with your customer and have those discussions that we have products or services that help resolve real business challenges. Now, whilst that still is work in progress, we need to be getting quicker at how quickly we onboard and bring products and services to market, then we have been talking to the likes of Logical Operations, who have a portfolio of emerging tech courses, and very soon you'll start to see these appear in our shop window. Now, to a degree, it's a little bit of spin. It's giving ourselves the ability to go out there and talk about AI, to talk about machine learning, to talk about natural language, and then tie it back to something very, very tangible. Will it create a little bit of work if and when a customer comes to us and says, it's an opportunity I'd like to explore? Hell yes. But actually, if I go back in time, that's almost, the type of organisation we were. We used to a little bit of spin, a little bit of product marketing out there with a view to responding and being quick to respond when that opportunity came in. And I very much want to continue down that mantra. So we're continuing to look for products, partnerships, services that will enhance and broaden our portfolio and importantly make ourselves the right shape for our customers. Now, talking about our customers, and something again that I'm very keen to resolve, I guess, is the story or the conversation that we've had in the business around service level agreements and how we manage and measure them. And I think it's fair to say that if we go back into the operational part of the business, and clearly my background means that I'm quite an advocate of how this was born into fruition, that we have a service level agreement back in with the rest of the business, but we rely on the business to tell us how we're doing. And in any business environment, what you don't do is allow your customers to be coming to you to tell you necessarily how you're doing without you knowing how you're performing. So what we want to do, and there's a pilot program that we're building at the moment, and again it's a cross-functional program, is looking at some way of providing automation to sales requests. Now, we don't have it fully scoped out right now, but in a utopia world, this will very much consist of sales being able to push into a single point, a sales request, and that sales request will then work through a workflow, automated, provide a level of visibility so you can understand where you are or who is dealing with that opportunity at any one point in time, and importantly give back to operations some degree of reporting that allows them to know how they're doing in relation to the opportunities they're trying to service. So as I said, it's very much in its early stages. I would hope that if we get this right, we can then expand it beyond an enterprise request to maybe into solutions, into bid management, and maybe into the complaints management process as well. So therefore you'd have one place that you could go to in order to understand where your inquiry or query was within the system or machine that is the operations business. So I'll give you more information on that as we start to move forward. But clearly, again, if we're looking about how we can improve either the outlook for our customers, or we improve the visibility within our side of our organisation, and it's these type of things that we need to address and need to move forward and build a solution for. In the same way, we're continuing to, and it's also a verbal welcome to Neil at this point, that we've obviously invested in the likes of bid management, and that bid management role will obviously look at our Connect partners, and a big part of that role is clearly ensuring that we have the right relationships with the right organisations. Again, closing the full loop back into the product piece that says we have a shop window that appeals to the demands or the needs of our customers. So again, work in process, but an example of where we as an organisation are needing to invest in order to free up, let's say, time of the salesperson to go and do what the salesperson needs to do, which is spend time with the customer. On a final point, I guess, in terms of areas that were key to us that we needed to invest in as we move forward, was certainly around HR and making HR a real true business partner to the organisation. Unfortunately, I guess with Sarah leaving, it's made us take a little bit of a step backwards, but absolutely our commitment is to finding somebody to work in that team so it can free up the likes of Lindsay to work on initiatives like the employee satisfaction survey, like the launch of the PDR process and how that then ties back into the goals, the visions of the organisation, so that we can all pull and drive in the same direction. So kind of a whistle tour. I'm very conscious that I could probably talk into this for several more minutes, if not, hours, as I have a tendency to do. I just wanted to, I guess mix it up a little bit, give you a little bit more visual interpretation of the sort of things that are kind of going through my head. Just wanted to leave you on a couple of things, I guess. One is, again, reflecting on the fact that life can be very, very demanding inside Global Knowledge, be that GKA or GK training. You're not alone. Obviously, there's a number of people that are in a very similar boat to you. Myself and the rest of the management team are fully committed to working through some of those challenges. And I hope what you do recognise now that, whilst this is not wholesale change, there are numerous things that are happening inside of the organisation that are making us a better shape and or a better organisation to work for, and anybody that knows me knows that certainly, one of, again, my key objectives when I come into work is to certainly enjoy myself. It's a big part of my life. I certainly want to come in and I need the people around me to have that same sort of smile and enthusiasm on their face. And then the final thing I just wanted to say was clearly that we're approaching that Christmas period or that Christmas break. We have the Christmas party, which is due next week. I very much hope that most of you can attend it. It was very important that clearly we had this. We used to have kick-offs and a way of formalising the start of the new year. This is not about that. There is no formal presentations, there are no activities. This is just a recognition of the time and the effort and the hard work that every one of you put into last year, which was, whichever way you put it, a phenomenal year. It was a great year, both at the top line and the bottom line. So it's a thank you from me, it's a thank you from the organisation, and I fully hope that most of you can attend that. And on that, I bid you farewell, and I will speak to you again just before, obviously, the Christmas break. Thank you.